So I started taking piano lessons when I was 5. The piano was with me already in a way because luckily we had one in the home, and my older brother was already taking lessons. My parents, I was born in the US, but my parents grew up in China at a time in which they couldn't have much exposure to classical music. And so, although there wasn't that awareness, but I think my parents, still knew that moving to the US in the 80s and raising our, the two of us, starting a family there, that, to have music at the middle of a home must be a beautiful and valuable thing, and in fact must be the sort of expected thing, I suppose, in a very traditional view of the West. And so I'm very lucky that we did have lessons for both my brother and me, and maybe at first it was just for me to imitate him or to, compete with him. There was a time when I was so happy that I was playing the piece that he played just a year ago, even though I was actually 5 years younger. But I also remember that we had some records. I remember my dad would put on a CD before I was put to bed, and I would listen, and I don't remember all the pieces in it, but I got very used to whatever order of famous pieces was on that CD, the most famous, the Appassionata Sonata of Beethoven, and later on that CD was the famous Serenade of Schubert, the Ständchen. I think it was in the Liszt transcription, I think it was piano solo. Although, of course, I didn't know any of that at the time. I just heard this melody and this color, and I didn't know that it was a perfect setting. It was a serenade, a piece for the nighttime. I didn't know that, but it was at night, and I was lying in bed as a kid, and it just felt, I think, very comforting. It felt like, the world was a safe place in some sense, at least as long as that music was going on. I'd love to travel. And I think music is actually, in a way, a means of traveling, of transport, not just to different places, but to different times, to imaginary places and imaginary times, and also in a way to travel close to the inner life of another person, studying the music of a particular composer and feeling like you can almost know this person, or it could be in the process of performing a piece and working with another musician, which is a very kind of vulnerable, I think, and deep experience with another person that's deeper than words. And that kind of discipline of playing with other people, which requires give and take, which requires listening and being aware of not being shy and being afraid to make your own contribution, right? But being aware of how this affects the other person. And I kind of view that similarly, those ideals for collaborating with other people, for listening to them in both music and in life. I remember when my family and I were in New York City, one of the first times I'd been as a little kid, but we visited the old Steinway Hall, a very legendary place where all the great pianists had come to try their instruments. And I just went, and I already was playing a Chopin ballade, and I played just to try out a big and beautiful piano that I had never played before. And some people walking by looked through the window, but there was one, I think they were a young couple, and they stopped and looked and came in, and I remember in particular the lady who had a little baby already was tearing up and was clearly very emotionally taken. And as a kid, it felt very it felt like something very deep had touched her. It didn't feel like it normally felt when people applauded me for being precocious or for being just being an accomplished kid. It felt that there was actually something deep that had reached her. I don't know whether that something deep was something that I understood at all or was conscious of, and it made me understand that there is something greater than ourselves, I think, in music. I think that's still the feeling that guides me. I think there are still wonders in music that, even with the benefits of growing up a little in education, there's still things that you try to get to the bottom of them and you feel like a child compared to those realities. So thinking just about the stage I'm at as a young musician, I'm 24 right now, we spend so much time trying to have our ideals always present before us, the kind of musician we want and wish to be. I think there's a way in which that necessarily implies the person that you aren't yet as a musician, the kind of musician you aren't yet being. I like very much this, something that the great 20th century teacher Nadia Boulanger said, "In my day, all anyone sought was to perfect their craft. Nowadays, everyone is trying to stand out and be individual. But the thing to understand is one isn't individual by choice." I think that's very interesting. I think it means that I couldn't actually play in any other way than my way, whatever that means. For that reason, I don't actually need as much to seek myself. I sort of am instead trying to disappear into becoming a channel for the ideals that I have for sound and for character and emotional drama in music. Throughout all of that, if I've done my work well, I think then there will still be my signature on the work, in the sound. And hopefully that's something that people hear. But if not, the relationship between me and my audience is not where I demand that they understand a certain way or appreciate a certain way. I think it's whatever they choose to take from it. Yeah.